YP सिंह आ गए।
Yes, ma'am. So do we start now then? Yeah. Because we have,
and the others can join because we have 5 minutes. You know, the others as they come in, we can, you know.
yeah.
Yeah. So Narendra, you want to do the introduction?
Yes, ma'am. Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
So good evening. Good evening, all of you. So welcome to the Spotlight series number 3. So we already had 2 series earlier, and we had the privilege of hearing 4 wonderful speakers, 2 from the East and 2 from the West, and all were equally good, and they gave us their first-hand experience of caregiving, and the whole tone they had set was that caregiving is not much of a burden, but it is a forced thing which comes to us, and in the process we always get into some kind of awe, or maybe we get into some kind of denial mode as to why it is happening to us, but then gradually we start accepting it, and then how do we just cope it, and then start taking it as a responsibility, and to an extent also enjoy it. So that was the kind of experience that we had with other speakers. And we today have 2 eminent speakers, 2 eminent carers, and also the guiding force behind the Delhi chapter. And they have been, like personally, they have been carers to their own dependent, like with their own close relatives. But then they also have consolidated their experience and have been extending support in terms of going around patient homes and providing counseling. And it would be a wonderful opportunity for us, for all of us to hear them. So I now first, before inviting the speaker, I would like to have a few words from the chair of ARDSI. Madam, I would like to have a few words, and then you can set the tone, and we can invite YP Wing Commander YP Singh to speak on the subject. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Narendra. I thought I'd already spoken a few words even before you. But anyway, thanks a lot. And then, you know, as you all know, caregiving is the most challenging job on the planet, I would say, because caring for a person with dementia is really, every day is a new challenge. And for every person, it is different. Every, you know, from the morning, it changes to the evening, and then from day to the other day. There are lots of challenges amongst family members also. And basically what we have seen is it is lack of awareness which causes most things. All of us have had this experience. I myself have had this experience about 25 years ago, because had we known something, we would have done things better in a different manner. But because of our ignorance about the topic, and that's why, you know, we have not dealt with it in the manner in which it should have been dealt. So these are something which all the caregivers face and who have gone through over so many years. Now awareness is a lot more, and we have a lot of meetings and the caregiver support groups, and so things are different. But even at the last meeting, we heard Geeta Iyer spoke about, how it was all new for her and she was learning on the. That is what we all do. We all learn as we go along, and then we get better towards the end. Today, I look forward to hearing, as Narendra said, 2 eminent speakers and who will be talking about their experiences. So back to you, Narendra.
Thank you, ma'am. So now, without losing much time, I would like to hear Wing Commander YP Singh. So he has been a very passionate person when it comes to caregiving. So I have had the privilege of being in his company for a long time now. And even as Madam Meera was telling, so when I had my own experience of caring briefly for my father, so I drew a lot of inspiration from Wing Commander YP Singh. So it is a privilege to have him right here. So now I invite Wing Commander YP Singh to share his experience. Sir.
Okay, good. I can't see myself.
Yeah.
I see you.
Okay.
Yeah, we can see you, sir.
Okay. Thank you, Narendra, for those kind words. Good evening, everybody. I am my name is Wing Commander YP Singh. I retired from the Indian Air Force. I retired from the Indian Air Force in 1990. After retirement, we settled down at Noida. It's a NCR, part of the Delhi NCR. And while I was in the Air Force, I was interested in computer. So after retirement, I got into information technology business. And my wife was teaching in a school in Delhi, South Delhi. She was teaching 10th and 12th standard students in English literature. We settled down nicely in Noida, and life was good. The years rolled by. By 1998, my wife told me one day that she's having problem with her speech, and I also noted that while she was speaking, she was slurring. Her speech was slurring, especially when she used longer words like electricity or distinguished or something like that. So we waited for some more time, and I saw there was no improvement in her speech. So I took her to the military hospital, and there, after a couple of tests and scans and various other things, it was recommended by the doctor, medical specialist there, that she requires to be seen by a speech therapist. So we came back to Noida. There was one very good speech therapist here available, retired colonel. He had opened his own clinic. And after 4 or 5 sittings with him, he said she doesn't have any speech problem. There is something more deeper. There's some other problem that she has more serious problem. So I suggest you take her back to military hospital and have her checked up by a good specialist. So back again to the military hospital, and after a lot of tests and scans and various other things, she was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease. Now, this diagnosis did not sort of alarm me unduly, because I had no idea. 25 years back, this word Alzheimer was totally unknown to a large section of our population. I didn't know myself anything about Alzheimer. So we came back home and got back to our normal routine. I with my work, and my wife with her school. After some time, she had to resign from the school because her speech deteriorated to a degree where it was not possible for her to teach. And she became a normal housewife, and staying at home, she did not have any problems of carrying out her activity of daily life or all other activity in the house, including cooking and looking after the house, etc., etc. She was, with a little bit of help from me, she was able to manage everything. But not still now, we are not thinking about having a caregiver or the possibility of having a caregiver, because it was all in ignorance is bliss. Sometime in January 2001, in a span of about 15 days, her condition deteriorated suddenly so badly that at the end of it, say about 15 days, 20 days later, her whole personality changed. Her whole face changed, the eyes became vacant, and she couldn't do anything herself. She needed my help to even, feed her or do all other things to her. So this was from a 0% caregiver. I was propelled into 100% caregiver without any knowledge of what is in store for me, what I'm supposed to do, how I'm supposed to do. I had no idea at all. Whenever we talk about caregiving, nowadays all the internet or guidebooks are all full of various problems that a caregiver might like to have. That is, about communicating with the patient, or bathing, dressing, eating, uh, incontinence, aggressiveness. These are the problems that everyone is supposed to encounter. I had the same problems with like everybody else, and I learned by common sense and a little bit of jugaad here and there, and I managed to get over the problems that I had to encounter. What was the incontinence problem didn't give any undue discomfort to me. I managed to cope up with that fast enough. What was problematic for me was her aggressiveness, and not the normal aggressiveness of shouting or yelling or abusing. No, her aggressiveness was a different type actually. She used to get up in the middle of the night and start walking up and down in the house. And initially, I didn't pay any attention, but a couple of times she fell down, walked into a wall, walked into a furniture, got hurt, started bleeding. So then, when the moment she used to get up, I used to get up with her and walk with her at say 2 o'clock in the night, 1 o'clock in the night, and keep an eye on her to see that she doesn't fall down and hurt herself. Now that this was getting to be too much for me. I used to get fatigued very fast. She used to walk around 4 to 5 hours, and then out of sheer fatigue, she used to lie down and go to bed. But then one day I found that there was a power breakdown, and the house was in total darkness except one emergency light that I had kept in the bedroom. She got up, she went up to the door of the bedroom, and instead of stepping into the passage and going to the drawing dining area, she returned back actually. So I was surprised. I peeped outside and I saw the total darkness. So somehow it appeared that because of the darkness, she didn't want to venture out in the room. Now, from that day onwards, I kept all the lights in the house switched off. All the house in the light, all the lights in the house, I had to keep switched off. So her walk was limited to the bedroom itself. Now, then even that was a little tiring. I had to stay awake and look after her so that she doesn't fall down. I talked to a doctor and he suggested some kind of tranquilizer or sedative. So we tried that sedative thing, very mild doses, and it worked. So I had all the problems that aggressiveness was posing for me. It was taken care of. But two events, I don't want to go into the details of how to feed and how to bathe and how to, dress the patients and all. Everybody is aware of that actually. During this period of looking after becoming a caregiver, I learned to cut her hair. I learned to dye her hair, give her facial, and most of all, I learned to cook. And that was a great side product of this being a caregiver. Now, two events that took place during this time of caregiving, which left a deep impact on me. The first one was one fine morning when I went to see if she was awake. I saw she was sleeping on the side, and there was a blood coming out of her mouth, and the whole pillow was soaked in blood. I was totally actually in shock. I had no idea as to what is happening to her. I called a doctor friend, and he came and he opened her mouth and I saw, and what we found was last night's dinner. She had kept the food in her mouth and, just put it on the side, both sides of her mouth, and that had infected the gum, and she was bleeding from the mouth. So I asked the doctor, how so much of blood? The gum cannot produce so much of blood. He said it is some saliva and gum mixed and all, and it spread on the thing. So that was very, very disturbing. That trend was very disturbing. The other event that was very disturbing was I had taken her to Calcutta. She was from Calcutta. Her people were from Calcutta, and they were insisting for me to bring her there so that they can show her to a very big name doctors in Calcutta. And we had gone from here by flight. On the way back, we were coming back by Rajdhani, and we had a four-berther where those who have traveled by train or Rajdhani, left side, right side, you have lower upper, lower upper. So we had a lower upper berth, and the berth opposite was vacant. The other two people they had not come. Now, during any train, we had traveled train journey quite a few trains earlier. What I used to do, she used to lie down on the berth, and I used to sit near her feet and stay awake, because if she used to wake up occasionally and look at me and go back to sleep. This time, sometime the Rajdhani started at about 5 o'clock, and somewhere in the middle of the night, it stopped on some station. Now, I was very tired. I thought train is going to stop here for maybe 5-10 minutes. I'll just lie down on the empty bus opposite. So I went and lied down there. That's the time she woke up, and she didn't find me near her feet. She, in panic, ran out and went to look for me outside. Some passengers had deboarded the train, and the door was open. So she went on the platform, and she looked for me here and there, and then she wanted to come inside the train. By this time, the attendant of the train was there to close the door. He won't let her inside. He thought there's some local who's trying to come into the compartment. So she was trying to tell him something, but her speech was completely gone. I mean, you couldn't make out any word actually. So she was trying to tell him something. He didn't understand. He called a police guy who was standing on the platform. The police chap he couldn't understand also as to what my wife was telling him. So he wanted to take her to the local thana and discuss and decide as to, she must be from local village somewhere around here who's wandered onto the platform. Now, in this commotion, there 10 people had gathered near the door. I woke up, and I had just gone to sleep for about 5 minutes, not more than that. I rushed to the door and I saw what was happening there. After a lot of explanation, a lot of the matter was sorted out, and I brought her inside. Now, this incident, I still wake up sometime in cold sweat when I get sometime seen it. These are the two incidents that has left a deep impact on me, and I still sometimes remember. And I think about what ifs. What if I had not woken up? What if the police have had taken her to the thana? What if the train has started? So on and so forth. Okay. By June 2003, she developed a breathing problem, serious breathing problems. She couldn't breathe properly. I took her to the local Air Force clinic here. They gave her oxygen, they gave her nebulizer, but nothing worked. Her temperature was high, and the doctor there told me to take her to a big hospital. Now, it was month of June. The outside temperature was in the region of, say, 44 degrees, 43 degrees. And I didn't have an air-conditioned car. So I didn't think it would be a good idea to drive down all the way to military hospital. So I took her to a big hospital close to my house. There, the doctors, admitted her to the ICU. They did all the things to bring the temperature down and give her breathing and all. After all this thing was over, doctor came to me and asked me that she needs life support ventilator. You will have to sign a paper and you'll have to agree to that. Now, I was in an emotional, whatever I said, I was emotional wreck that time by this time actually. And whatever I said was emotional response without any rationale. I said, yes, she deserves the best, give her whatever she wants. So, but the doctor said there are two things that you must understand. First thing is that if she's on ventilator, she has to be on the ventilator till she recovers or she dies. You cannot remove the ventilator in between. I don't know how far it is true. I have not yet found out from any doctor so far. And the second one is, she said it is very expensive. She quoted, the doctor quoted a figure of about 11,000, 13,000 a day. So I said, it doesn't matter, you put her on ventilator. She was put on the ventilator, and 2 days later, I transferred her to the military hospital. And she was there in coma on ventilator for 22 days. And on 3rd July 2003, she passed away. After her demise, 15, 20 days later, I got called from ARDSI Delhi chapter, and it was requested that why don't I join as a volunteer. Now, because of my experience of looking after a caregiver for 3-4 years, I had no idea of joining anything. I had no idea of being anywhere near the word Alzheimer. And I did not want to hear Alzheimer for the next 20, 20, 30 years. But the ARDSI was helpful to me by small, putting me to some doctors or somebody who was looking after Alzheimer patient and all. So I said, out of obligation, I said, all right, I'll join. But I was already thinking of excuses to get out of this volunteership. And I was there for about 2-3 months. Then a call came for a home visit. I was asked if I can go and do this home visit somewhere in West Delhi. And I said, all right. I, with Colonel Khanna, who is slightly indisposed, I and Colonel Khanna went and visited this house. The scenario was there that husband, wife, 2 children, teenagers, 14, 16, boys and girls. The gentleman's father had Alzheimer's. Now, the children had given ultimatum. They said, either you send us to a hostel or we shift out of this house, leave Dadaji here and keep a caregiver or a nurse or something because of the weird behavior of the grandfather. Now, the weird behavior means, they said, when our friends come for joint study or just to hang out or talk to us, Dadaji comes sometimes, walks into the room naked without any clothes. He comes singing in the room. He urinates where we are sitting there. And this is very embarrassing, actually. And we are the butt of jokes in our school. So we want this, that you send us to hostel if you can't shift out from here. So I was a new recruit for this kind of thing. So Kanna told me to come on, get on now. So I went full throttle and I gave him all the things that I wanted to tell somebody about caregiving and what Alzheimer is and why his grandfather is behaving like this. And I spoke for about an hour and a half to them and the family. And then we said goodbye and we came back. 15 days later, I got a call from this gentleman. And he said, he thanked me profusely. He said, it's not that my children are dancing with joy now, but they have toned down their attitude and they are helpful in the house. And thank you so much for doing all that thing. Now that left me, I was actually speechless. I said, I did something which helped somebody. That's great. So I thought, should I stay here in ARDSI or should I get out? I had a very plausible story of getting out actually. I kept the story till today. I have not actually told anybody about that. Now, during I had a very unique position here because I was a caregiver myself, and during my home visits, I had seen different types of caregiver doing things differently, or maybe in a similar fashion. Now, some of the incidents that I had witnessed was there's one place where I went to do counseling. The gentleman had Alzheimer, and his wife, the middle class family, and his wife was sitting next to him and crying away. So I asked her, why are you crying? And she said, इनको ये बीमारी हो गई है क्योंकि हमने 2 साल करवा चौथ नहीं किया. So I was totally stumped actually. I spoke to her for nearly about an hour actually, trying to give. I threw all the causes of Alzheimer and what, but she was not convinced. She said, "अब मैं अगले साल करूँगी तो ये ठीक हो जाएंगे." So this is one experience that I really thought how people have got different ideas about this disease. There was another case where a lady executive, her father was Alzheimer patient, and she had a very good caregiver. That's what she told me when I visited her. She told me he's very good and he looks after my father, very nicely, and I have no problem at all. She goes to the office every day, comes back. So about 10 days after my visit, she rang me up and she was crying and howling on the phone. Actually. So I said, "What happened? I hope your dad is all right." She says, "It's not my dad, it is the caregiver." I said, "What happened to him?" She said he had gone to the village, and because there were some local village problems, and I took a leave that day to look after to be with my dad. And I thought I'll give him a little bit of sponge and clean him up, etc., etc. So when she removed his shirt, she was horrified to see that there was a blue and black marks on his back. He was beaten badly by either a belt or a stick. And the caregivers she had so much of faith in used to beat her father every day. So when for all those, I hope nobody here has got this in the position where they have to keep a caregiver. But if you have a caregiver who is not a very close relative, even that is a possibility of getting abused, the patient getting abused, because looking after an Alzheimer, what I have learned is looking after Alzheimer is a very difficult task. All of us know about it actually, and it is really extremely difficult to not to get angry or irritated at least. So you have undue faith in your caregiver is putting your patient at risk. Now, I would like to take another 5 minutes actually, and I pose a question to you all here. When the doctor told me that she needs a ventilator, and my response was emotion-backed, I said, yes, give her whatever she wants. So she was on ventilator. Now, after she passed away, I had gone to the military hospital to visit some friends there who were admitted there. And I went and met the doctor who was looking after my wife in the ICU. I asked the doctor, supposing I have not put my wife on the ventilator, how long would she have survived? He says max 2 to 3 days, because maximum 2 days, because her lungs were so badly infected that we gave her so much of powerful antibiotics. It didn't make any dent on the infection in the lung. So max we said 2 days. That's all. So now I'm thinking that did I do something wrong by putting on a ventilator? And when I used to go to the military hospital every day in the morning at 8 o'clock, and I used to stay there till 6. In between, they don't permit you to go in the ICU. But I had to request a guy, and I had to go and see her for 5 minutes at a time. And it was not a nice sight. When you've seen a patient on ventilator, it is anything but nice. It's very, you have tubes and syringe and pipes everywhere inserted in her body, and there are blue and black marks all over her body. It was not nice at all. So I actually feel that she was tortured for another 22 days. If I had refused ventilator at that time in the local hospital here, uh, she would have passed away. It would have been released for her. So I don't know actually. This is a thought for you to think about. Because I read in the papers, and it says that nowadays people are putting it in their will that if anything happens to me, don't put me on the life support. Let me go. So I don't know how ethical or how right it is meant. I have finished. Thank you.
Thank you, YP Saab. It was very wonderful and in a way more emotional for us to hear you. And you have also shown us that you were a true superhero during your caregiving days, and also you have carried that forward as a counselor with Delhi chapter, and you shared few very great experiences. I think that more amounts to the kind of stigma that attaches around this particular problem that we are faced with. And it is always very unnerving for us to hear such kind of abuse which happen with patients, especially by people whom we trust as carers. So thanks for just getting us, and maybe it was more like a visual kind of an experience, as if we ourselves underwent that kind of experience. So your talk was so good. So I will just reserve those questions for the end of the session. Now, without wasting much of our time, I would invite another superhero among us, and I would ask Beena Berry, madam, to just share her experience with us. And also, Beena Berry ji, you can unmute yourself before you go ahead. And I'm muting YP Saab. When you are going to answer questions, you need to unmute yourself once again.
Okay.
Beena Berry ji, you can unmute yourself right now and go ahead with your talk.
Thank you, Narinder.
Yeah. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me here on the Superhero Spotlight series. I would like to start with a quote from Kafka on the Shore, written by Haruki Murakami. He says, "And once the storm is over, you won't remember how you made it through. You won't even be sure whether the storm is really over. But one thing is certain, when you come out of the storm, you won't be the same person who walked in. That's what the storm is all about." So what YP is saying, or many of the caregivers would tell you, is that they never forget what they have been through, and they just carry it with them. So the storm for my mom and me was over in 2007, but I also still carry it with me. There were 9 years, which I would say were an unforgettable experience. Now, ever since I've been now with the ARDSI for quite some time, and I've heard a lot of caregiving stories, and I feel that every story teaches us something. So I hope that my mother's Alzheimer's journey that I am going to share will also in some way bring something new to the table and be of some use to everybody's listening today. So if I were to introduce her, I would say that she was a woman who had lived her life with a whole range of exciting experiences. In spite of the Alzheimer's that she had in the last phase of life, I would term it a successfully wonderful life. She was born in 1929 in Bahawalpur, which is now in Pakistan, as you know. She fled Pakistan to reach Delhi when she was barely 18 years old. She struggled with poverty and lack of resources as any other refugee. She married a man who serenaded her with songs to her beauty, and she followed this man to his diplomatic postings in various countries. She had 4 children, one of them is me. and she had 9 grandchildren when she bid farewell to the world. So she undoubtedly had a full, exciting life. So out of the 4 children that she had, my brothers and sister were settled abroad, and I was the only one living with my parents. It was the beginning of dementia that was the confusing part and a shocker for my dad and me. This was in the late 90s, and the awareness in our household regarding dementia was absolutely zero. In fact, the word dementia to us would have meant, if we had heard it from somebody, would have meant a person who's demented or who's mad. So the beginning stage where her behavior was changing every day was very confusing for us. And much as they loved each other, my dad would get irritated, thinking mom was trying to be just difficult. He would then speak curtly to her and she would start crying. So, because in those days she had started crying at the drop of a hat. After quite some time, seeing so many unpredictable changes and those that we could not understand, dad took her to the hospital. And the doctor diagnosed it as depression and prescribed her antidepressants. Then she began to sleep a lot. When she got up from her long afternoon naps, she would be sad, melancholy, and moody, and the crying would start again. It was like a vicious circle. And that would make dad irritated again. I was totally confused. It wasn't easy to see my mom slowly becoming different than she used to be. But I also could not figure out how to help her. When she was around my children, it seemed to help, but that didn't seem to be enough. My sister, who lived abroad, would visit frequently, but my brothers wouldn't. So dad and I thought that she was missing her sons, and therefore she was depressed. So the treatment for depression carried on. As time went on, we continued to see more signs that were bewildering to us. She used to host large parties in foreign countries, and she was an excellent cook. And suddenly she was making the unthinkable of mistakes, minor ones, but they could have caused an accident in the kitchen. So when we tried to make her stop going to the kitchen, she was more depressed because she loved cooking. Another thing that confused us was that she had been highly social with a large group of friends and family members. Even though dad was retired, she had been still busy catching up with friends she had made in various countries. But now we saw that she was slowly starting to withdraw and isolate herself. When her circle grew small, the symptoms became more pronounced to us. We would just see her just either standing at a spot and staring at someone for an extended period, or just sitting on the sofa and playing solitaire for hours. And she used to fall a lot in those days. There was nothing that we could see that could have made her fall. So it was very confusing. We would tell her to be careful while walking or doing whatever she was doing. But it was really of no use because sometimes she just fell while she was standing. It seemed like her balance was off. It was then that we decided to change the line of treatment and get a second opinion from a better known private neurologist. I really have no words to describe our visit to the neurologist. We waited in his dimly lit waiting hall for almost 2 hours for an appointment that was already set. And then he hardly gave us 10 minutes. He just quizzed mom about her name and address. And then he said, "Show me your tongue." And then he announced to us that she had dementia and there was no treatment and that it would be a downward journey. The private neurologist just prescribed some medicines and the verdict, but absolutely no guidelines on caregiving techniques or what to do when there is no cure for an illness. It was like a sentence had been delivered cold-heartedly. I must also admit that at that time, we had never thought of the word caregiving as a technique. It is just something that is in our culture and taken as granted in a household. Just as at the start of a life, a mother looks after a child, this process of caregiving just carries on in families. When someone is ill or old, you just look after them. That there is a technique to it for a certain illness is something that we were to learn. Anyhow, by the time it was diagnosed as dementia, mom had already started slurring and missing out on alphabets, resulting in her speech getting distorted. In that initial phase of discovering that it was dementia, my father was still in good health, so he began to find out more about the illness. Obviously, we didn't have Google in those days, so acquiring information was no cakewalk. So it was then up to us to figure out how to manage my mom. So my father would find articles in the newspaper and mark them out for me. And I would come back from office and we would discuss this. From our collective experience of researching and reading, combined with the daily challenges that she was throwing our way, we devised our caregiving techniques. She had started going out of the house alone a couple of times and forgotten her way back. So we needed to tackle this problem. This was a very tough task because if we didn't allow her to go out whenever she wanted, she would object aggressively. And if we did, we ran the risk of losing her. So there was constant supervision required with either my father or me or the children taking up the duty. So we continued to search and gather information, and then we started changing her diet according to what we read. For example, put more nuts and green leafy vegetables to her food. Then she had high blood pressure, so we learned that we have to manage that illness better to be able to look after her. So she was a good singer and liked music, so we tried to let her spend more time listening to music. The children and I would sit with her to go through old albums or watch a movie together. Whatever we did, though, we realized that she had a very short attention span and she would quickly want to move on to something else. We did whatever we thought might work and whatever made sense to us. Along with mom, dad also stopped moving out less. And we almost stopped entertaining at home because mom would not communicate with anyone. She would only keep smiling, and that became a little uncomfortable for the visitors. But all these seem like small challenges. Our biggest challenge was her hallucinations, followed by the harrowing time after each session. Mostly during an afternoon nap, she would get up screaming and imagining that someone was standing in the doorway and trying to get close to her. She would try to shriek it away, whatever it was, while flailing her arms wildly. After one of these sessions, she suddenly began speaking about her experience of getting out of Pakistan amidst the turmoil of the separation of the two countries. I remember my children and I just sitting and listening to her with full attention. In spite of her slurring speech, there were times that she would surprise us with a clear mind and clear diction, and it was so easy to understand her in those few instances. The hallucination incidents kept getting worse, though uh, kept getting worse, and by this time we had made sure that we never left her alone at home. Either my dad stayed home or I gave up going to the office to be with her. It took us some time to understand that the hallucinations may have been the result of sundowning. Again, we found out more about it and worked our way around it by making changes to the house with better lighting or removing tall plants or lamps. I'm not sure if anything really helped her much because the hallucinations continued and it was probably just emerging from her mind. But we tried whatever we thought was best. So even before the hallucinations and the general deterioration, what struck me as most unfair was her neighborhood friends cutting off from her. Unable to comprehend her symptoms and actions, they started disassociating themselves from her. They stopped calling her for their tea sessions and walks. When I understood about dementia, I went to the neighborhood aunties and I explained to them about the illness as much as I knew. I made it clear that it was a medical condition and not madness, as mom had started to seem. I invited them home, telling them it would be good for mom. Only one auntie made the effort. However, she came home once and never tried again. But I guess it was uncomfortable for her, and I fully understand. And I would still laud her for that effort that she made. But so much has changed since then. People are more understanding and accepting of the disease today than they were in those days. I was running a consulting organization in those days and had a staff of about 6 people. By this time, Dad had also started keeping unwell and landed up in hospital a couple of times. So it became impossible for me to attend office, and I left it up to my staff to run the show. It obviously didn't work out too well. So I decided that I should get some outside caregiving help. Someone suggested an agency, and I requested for a lady to take care of Mom. But Mom refused to accept any of these ladies that we hired, and they would leave after a few days as she would push them out. In fact, at that time, there were no professionally qualified nursing staff for Alzheimer's patients, or not that we knew of. There was just the regular maids who were enrolled in agency and sent by them. None of them knew anything about the illness, and we used to see themselves, they were getting scared of my mother when she would shout in her broken language or try to push them out. Surprisingly, the last maid that stayed on till the end was able to get through to her, and I would see Mom sitting quietly and meekly when the maid was around for her 12-hour shift. Now, this is where I have one of my biggest regrets. Seeing Mom sitting quietly and not objecting allowed me to go for work, and I was relieved. But after her death, when I joined the ARDSI as a volunteer and learned more about the various facets of the illness, the caregiving, and the possible abuse by caregivers, I constantly have a doubt in my head about the treatment that this maid may have meted out to my mother. Otherwise, how did an aggressive patient of Alzheimer's that Mom had become suddenly become so submissive because a stranger had told her to? My doubt is also strengthened due to the fact that as soon as Mom died and we relieved the maid and we cleaned the house a few days later, I noticed that some of Mom's jewelry was missing. I closed my consulting firm a year after Mom died because the business had already suffered due to my absence. I wish I had closed it when Mom had a few years left and I could have given her more than my little snatches of time. That way, 100% of the caregiving, good or bad, would have been from me, someone who loved her dearly. Anyway, after the total deterioration of speech, the final thunderbolt struck us. Mom became paralyzed on her whole right side. That meant the jaw couldn't move to eat on the right side, the right arm couldn't function, and the right leg wouldn't move. She had become like a baby, and we had to attend to her every need in the bed or move her and make her sit where she wanted. But surprisingly, I never saw her forget where her attached bathroom was, and she always tried to go there. But it was another matter that she could not make it there in time anymore. The entire period from us noticing symptoms to the diagnosis to the often floundering caregiving that we administered lasted till 2007 when Mom died. The last 3 years of Mom's Alzheimer's saw me taking over from my dad completely, as he too was ailing and he wasn't able to look after her. In any case, she was becoming totally dependent on me for all of her activities. We made quite a few visits to doctors and hospitals in this period for medications and MRIs. From simple dementia, they told us it was vascular dementia, and then we were given the diagnosis of Alzheimer's. So this is the crux of my mom's and my journey with Alzheimer's. Her journey was longer as she started the symptoms and felt desperation as she realized that something was wrong with her. At that time, we didn't recognize her symptoms correctly. And I can imagine how traumatic this must have been for her. The Alzheimer's storm changed her from a vibrant, healthy, social, and amicable person to a lonely, scared, confused, and forgetful entity. And it changed me, I believe, for the better. I'm glad to be part of the ARDSI and contribute in whichever little way I can. Every little drop matters in this cause. I don't look at myself as a superhero. I just look at myself as a daughter who loved her mother enough. As a tribute to my mom, I have published a memoir about her life, which dwells a lot on her life as a woman who had many adventures and said goodbye to the world peacefully in her sleep one day. I'm left with a few questions though. We often counsel patients and caregivers that to avoid or delay Alzheimer's, we should have a regular regimen of a good diet, exercise, and a social circle. My mom was not lacking in any of these, yet she did get it, and that too at the age of just 70. So what made this happen? The other question is, while we were battling with mom's dementia, I heard from my cousin that my mom's elder sister was also suffering from Alzheimer's. So if both the sisters had it, does it run in our family? And is the next generation bound to be affected? There are no easy answers to these questions, I guess. Having said all this, I would also like to talk about how it is not totally a lost cause. Those 9 years of mom's life also had a lot of light moments when she brought laughter and smiles all around with her seemingly funny and unpredictable behavior. It was a joy to sit with her, look at old photographs, and talk about old times, and she had a lot of stories to tell. It was a joy to hear her sing, for she had been a good singer and played the harmonium well. Dad and she had been a loving couple, and till the end, it was a pleasure to see them walk hand in hand. When she stopped speaking, she resorted to smiling and opening up her arms to hug everybody who came to her, even if it was a complete stranger. I think the only time I saw her in a bad mood and irritated was when we forced the so-called professional caregiver onto her. Besides that, she was found with a smile mostly. Even when she was paralyzed and any family member fed her, she would smile fondly at them. That itself would bring a smile to our faces as well and cheer everyone around. I've heard equally heart gladdening stories from other friends who have had a parent with dementia. One of my friend's father would say that he was being called by NASA to go to the moon and he was just waiting for his suit. Another friend's father in law would sing in full harmony with his granddaughter and bring joy all around. These are just some instances, and when we counsel patients and caregivers from the ARDSI, we come across a lot more such cases. One family that a colleague of mine and I visited left us with quite a memorable incident as the patient, who was an 80-year-old lady, explained to us a recipe on how to make potato sabji and insisted that no one could make it better. Now it's been 3 years since that visit, and after quite a few follow ups with her, she still refuses to move to any of her children's homes and has a couple of paid caregivers at home with supervision by her children at first. So I think all this is made possible today by the advancement in both the medication and caregiving fields. Even if these are small steps, we do hear of medical breakthroughs in the field of dementia, and that is quite heartening. And caregiving, that big be all and end all of dementia, has evolved so much in the past years. It is certainly these newly researched and newly tested caregiving techniques that are making life more bearable and workable for the patients till the end. These techniques don't just dwell on the patient's need, but they also take into account the needs of the caregivers themselves. We can now see a more evolved manner in which the patient can be looked after, along with the caregiver who can work on their own needs as well. The key is to communicate openly and seek advice. So I would say to all the caregivers out there, please contact your nearest ARDSI and join the community. It is okay to ask for help when you need it. Put yourself first whenever you get the time, because your welfare is important to ensure the welfare of your patient. And lastly, I would like to say that from my experience, I have learned that a caregiver would need a lot of empathy to be able to look after their patient well. This is the time to forget any old grudges, if you've ever had them, that may have been against the patient, and bring out all the patience and love from within your heart. Because the patient might seem like a vegetable, but they can recognize and respond to sincere feelings coming from the caregiver. With that, I'll end my talk. Thank you, everyone, for listening.
That was so very absorbing, Veena ji. It was very wonderfully narrated. So Now, even before going open for asking questions, now I can see from our list of people, Dr. Manjari Tripathi with us. So I would like to hear some words from her because she has been an epitome of what you call inspiration for us, and she has been into this arena of treating people. So I would like to have some words of wisdom from her. Ma'am, over to you.
Thank you, Narendraji. I'm sorry I joined late. My cousin lost her husband, and today was the Shraddh ceremony. So these have been really tough times for all of us, and some people have lost near and dear ones. These are also tough times for our persons with dementia. There are innumerable incidences in these past 1 year where family members of people, I'm not talking about normal elderly, I'm talking about family members of people who have dementia have been distressed. And the distress has been justified because in this past 1 year, they have been faced with social isolation, which was the norm because of the COVID protocols. And in this 1 year, the people with dementia have really been socially isolated. Daycare center, which we had, became non-operational, um, and because again of the COVID safety issues. And we know that elderly people who have dementia, again, I'm not talking about the normal elderly, the elderly people who have dementia are vulnerable. They are elderly. So really, there have also been other issues which were incumbent due to lockdown, like repeated WhatsApp messages from patients, which I have got, which Binaji is also aware of, where medication is not available. They are in distress because of that. Where the medicine which they were taking is not there, but some other medicine is there. So they were in distress because of that also. And significantly, behavioral and psychological issues in our persons with dementias have increased during the lockdown period. Nevertheless, despite that happening, the Delhi chapter's volunteers have been busy, if not physically visiting homes, telephonically. Many of my own patients have received telephonic consults and counseling from our volunteers. And we have found that even though physically we may not be near the patient, telephonic counseling does offer hope and does offer some respite for our caregiver and our patients. I really liked what Beena ji said just now, that, and I agree completely with her, that many family members of people with cognitive complaints and dementia do not really seek help. They do not really talk. They do not really try to find out what are the professional organizations that can help them professionally, not in the sense of, just the medicines. For the medicines, the doctors are there. But I'm talking about day-to-day issues like he's not eating food. Doctor, he's being stubborn. Doctor, he's pulling out things from the cupboard. Doctor, he repeatedly wants to go out during the lockdown. He is depressed and he says he is going to die. This also had happened with one of our patients. So, all these issues have been handled excellently and professionally on phone. We have tried to tide over this time as we are right now with the help of our efficient, experienced volunteers. And the experience shows in the way they have talked. YP Singh and Beena Beriji, I really thank you for sharing your experience, because it's only when personal experiences are shared, other people whose family members have the condition can relate to the problem with you and confide in you. So it is indeed with great humbleness that I thank you all for sharing your experience and giving insights as to how you could tide over these difficult moments and come out of it and give back more in the form of a book or in the form of volunteering. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. That was Dr. Manjari, our president of Delhi chapter for all of us. So now I would like to open the floor for some questions. Before doing that, I would just summarize that we had very wonderful experiences shared by both Binaji and YP Singh. And I would want all of you to type your comments on the chat box so that I can read it out to them. So I have some congratulatory messages from so many people, and there is also a request that from Mr. Manoj that he has said that please include me in future meeting messages list. So we will definitely do that. And I would like to have questions on this. And I also have some kind of congratulatory messages for both YP and Bina, that for having spoken from your heart. So thank you so much. So YP Saab, I would just come to you because I don't see any questions. So like you have been now these days facing this COVID and other things. So have you ever had some kind of experience of counseling during this difficult time? So you can share some of your experience on that, because I do remember that you doing some kind of counseling during this difficult time. So you can share some of your experiences. So that becomes a learning for all of us. Yeah.
I had, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah, even during the COVID period, I had about 2 or 3 people on telephonic connections. They're 2 from Ghaziabad. One I got it yesterday. Somebody from Hyderabad said his relatives are in Ghaziabad and they need counseling. So I have fixed up a date with him tomorrow. I'll ring him up and we'll have a discussion telephonically or otherwise. So that's set for tomorrow. And I have had about 3 patients who we were in contact with. I've sent them the caregiver guide from our office by registered post, and we are in contact with them. We are in touch with them. They're also from Ghaziabad, actually. That's all.
So, yeah. So there is a question from some Ms. Gunjan. She is asking, does medicine work? Please advise. So I would now leave it to experts here.
Yeah, I'm
So
not a doctor.
we have the privilege of having Dr. Manjari also here. So there is a
So
question.
this is a very good question, because generally, there are 2 ways to tackle a disease. One is prevention and the other is treatment. Now, obviously, once the disease has set in, there is no question of prevention. There is treatment, but the treatment has to be done if the diagnosis is made early. For early diagnosis, any elderly person who has a memory change or change in behavior and personality after a particular age, which is different from the baseline, should come to the doctor, preferably a neurologist or a psychiatrist or a physician who is deft in the management of Alzheimer's disease. There are certain cognitive profile tests which are done. The diagnosis is not made on history. You have to sit out with the doctor and undergo a battery of tests which tell us what is the level of memory involvement. And then the doctor makes a diagnosis of a possible Alzheimer's or a probable Alzheimer's. And that is confirmed by doing certain neuroimaging tests. However, once this diagnosis is established, after doing the blood test, neuroimaging, there are tablets which are available to us, which have to be started early. These increase the memory chemical in the brain. Acetylcholine is the memory chemical in the brain. So the tablets increase the memory chemical by preventing its degradation. And if you start early, then the behavioral symptoms as well as the memory symptoms, they will not deteriorate as rapidly. I repeat it, they will not deteriorate as rapidly and they will remain stable. However, there is no cure. That is, it doesn't remove all the pathology of Alzheimer's in the brain, the abnormal proteins which are deposited in the brain, the dying of neurons, that it doesn't remove. So the disease is not cured, but you can control it from progressing rapidly and devastating the family. It gives many months for the family to adjust to the problem. It gives many months for the patient to hand over responsibilities and transfer responsibilities to other family members. So, the doctor's earnest request is that early diagnosis and early treatment, and the plague which we have is denial of diagnosis. I find this really a plague because many educated family members, many well-to-do family members, if you reveal to them that this is possible Alzheimer's, there's a complete denial. They refuse to come back, they refuse to take treatment. So this denial of diagnosis is a problem we still face today, and the only way to tackle is to generate awareness. So treatment is there provided it started early. Now, all of you must have heard there is a very new treatment which has come, like aducanumab, which is a new therapy which has come for Alzheimer's. This is available in the US. There's a little bit of controversy about how it can be used, but in the US, it's 56,000 US dollars. So it is a pretty expensive medicine. It's not inexpensive. For the younger ones here, I would like to say prevention is the key. And prevention is difficult because prevention is not a pill. I again repeat, prevention is not a pill. Prevention is behavior change. Prevention is lifestyle change. Prevention is healthy habits. And for the youngsters here, if you're worried, then start prevention. Thank you.
Thank you, doctor. That was very useful. So now I have another comment from Vikash Mishra, so who is thanking ARDSI, and once again we have like we have Jyoti Sethi, who is telling thank you for sharing experiences. Some of them I can relate to as they are very close to my heart. I am very blessed to have been introduced to ARDSI. So similarly, I have another comment from a person. I am a Commonwealth scholar. So she's Puravalli Sood. I am a Commonwealth scholar, dementia, and a doctor of medicine do not prevent progression. You need environmental medications, modifications, and evidence-based care management to give them a good go. So this is our opinion. So thanks, Dr. Puravalli, for that suggestion. So anything else to summarize? Binaji, would you like to add some more of your experiences, like for the comment that you have received, and then
Yes, I think during the COVID period, yes, we've had a lot of concerned phone calls, people not being able to get medications. And I have been forwarding quite a few of these to Dr. Tripathi, where medication is involved, or counseling ourselves where caregiving is involved. So there was a very interesting incident. One of the ladies called me up and she was saying that her husband is having a problem with a spot on the wall. And he keeps, there is a little mark on the wall and he keeps picking up his chappal and he keeps hitting it there. And then it's become very difficult for her to control it. And he keeps saying that there is a beetle there. So I told her, so don't try to control him. Tell him that he's been successful in killing the beetle. And now the beetle has left a mark and we should put a nice photograph of your choice on that piece. And she did that. So he's very happy because he made the selection of picking up a picture and putting at that spot. And he stopped beating the spot. So that's what I'm saying, or Dr. Tripathi was saying. So every time you have a little concern, just call up. We are just a phone call away. And because of the varied experience that we go through, we can give you little tips on how to manage it well. So that was just one of the
Narinder, I have got one suggestion that when you, in our country here, when you have any problem, leave alone Alzheimer or dementia and all, when you have any problems, there are well-meaning friends and relatives who tell you that there is a Baba there is a doctor there is a ashram there, or there is Ayurveda and all. My suggestion is, or my request is, don't chase doctors. Once you are diagnosed with Alzheimer, you know it is not curable. Your duty is to look after the welfare of the patient and see that he goes peacefully. Do not chase doctors. When I had this problem, there were any number of people bombarding me with, some Baba, some ashram here and there. So my request is that stay put with your doctor wherever you are and don't chase doctors. Thank you.
I think
Thank
that's a
you.
very valid advice, YP. I think that's excellent because people in India tend to do that. As soon as you get a diagnosis, you don't believe it, and then you go from one school of medicine to the other. And many of them, as you said, go to Babas as well, which is totally, ridiculous. And that is where we need to spread awareness. We have to tell them that, if they are more aware of it, they will accept diagnosis. But some people say, oh no, my father was so well qualified, he held such a big position, he was so good, how can he get this such a disease? Other people say, all sorts of, there are so many kinds of reasons that they will give you, because this person retired, or then I've heard stories of, she went to relative's house, she ate there, and then they put something in the food, and after she came back, she started acting weirdly. So, all these crazy things which can be removed only through awareness. But here, there were a couple of points which both Veena and YP, they spoke, which is really good food for discussion. One is that YP said that his wife was in ICU for over 20 days, but in hindsight, he felt that he should not have put her through it. He feels he tortured her. No, you definitely did not torture her because you did it in best intentions, but maybe, you could have avoided that, because if you were not in an emotional state, you could have avoided that. But that is an ethical matter, and it varies from family to family. Manjari, yeah, you can come in. As soon as I finish, you can come in. And in, foreign countries, they have these advanced care directives. That's what people need to do. But here we don't even have early diagnosis. So where's the chance of early care directives? So to avoid that, we can have family themselves instead of an individual person taking a call on this, the family all of them together take a conscious call, after a certain stage of deterioration, what is the kind of interventions we are going to give? At what stage are we going to stop? So this is a very ethical thing, and it is totally personal. There is no one rule that fits all. This is something which each family can take. This is one point of discussion. Second, which Veena said, she has taken exceedingly very good care of her mother. But even then she has this feeling, okay, at some point, should I quit my job? And should I no, you have done your best. And I think all of us must continue doing what we are doing. We should not give up what we are doing. You had the capability and the resources to hire somebody, and you hired it with all good intentions. But after hearing that, there's abuse of certain sorts, why my mother stopped talking, why was she so, listening to this new lady, could it have been abuse? These things are all, very, all of us as children, as a daughter, you feel, I could have done better. But please rest assured, you have done your best. And we need to get along with our lives. We need not feel guilty. All of us feel guilty at some point or other. This is another thing that most caregivers go through. But when you talk to others, and then you will know that only when we have done things which are bad for them, knowingly, that is only wrong. But here, no, it's nothing like that. So you carrying on with the job is the best thing you could have done. So these are the 2 points I think we can discuss. Yeah, Manjari, now it's over to you.
Ma'am, you made a very good point about advanced directives. For example, I'll give a very personal example. I had a family member who was very, very sick, of course, with Alzheimer's, and now they have three children. So one child was asked me what should be done. I said, see, now the condition is such that we need to put in the ICU on a ventilator. The other child said that, I don't think we should put on ventilator, because if we put on the ventilator, it's not, it's like not going to, it's going to just go on forever. The third child said that, no, I want that my parent, my mother has to be on the ventilator. Now, there was a discrepancy in all the three. Now, here is where the advanced countries, the advanced directive comes, helpful. If all of us have left an advanced directive with our children, hey, if I have a disease which is incurable, which is going to progress, which is going to lead me to pee and poo in my pants, and which is going to, lead me to a ventilator. And when I come to the stage that I am on a ventilator, please allow me to go. Now, this helps the children a great deal, because the children will not die of guilt, feeling maybe they should have put on ventilator, or maybe they should have not put on ventilator. So this advanced directive is there in many civilized advanced nations. However, in India, talking about death is taboo. Discussing about death is taboo. And really, people are not so used to, thinking how their death should be. And this is something which really needs a lot of, intelligence, emotional intelligence for us to think and tell our children. So I completely agree with Meera, but it is not easy, particularly when the three children are not agreeing with each other. If the three children are agreeing with each other, then it's easy. About the guilt issue, yes. I have patients who come and they feel that if they don't do a certain thing, it's going to be bad. But they've done everything. And you look at how much they have done, and then you have to sit down and tell them, look here, you've done everything which is possible in this country, which is possible in this city, and maybe which probably would have not been possible even in a country like Australia or US. So where is that guilt coming from? You've done everything, and just telling them that reduces the amount of guilt they face. Of course, I think the abuse issue is a huge issue, and that is something which really speaks volumes about the need for trained manpower and monitoring of that manpower. I can say that the fact that Beena ji has talked about her journey, the fact that she's brought out a book itself says that she's trying to help not only herself, but also help the millions of others whose parents may be having this condition. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, doctor. I just want your presence more. Like, I have a question from one of the participants. So they are asking, like, my mother has early onset Alzheimer's. She is 58 years old and presently is moderate to severe stage of Alzheimer. Any hope of this US approved medicine for treat moderate severe patients?
$56,000.
So, one is that we need biological biomarkers for giving this treatment. We need PIB scans, which are not there in India. And the PIB scan itself is very expensive. So the PIB scan, doing the PIB scan is like 100,000 US dollar. It's a PET scan, which is of Pittsburgh compound. Then we also need the medicine. And the benefit is iffy. The benefit is iffy means first time they applied to the FDA, the FDA refused granting them the permission to market the medicine. The second time they applied with refurbished data, the FDA gave them permission. So it is a very controversial molecule. I would not recommend it being used so that it jeopardizes the future of the future generations. You see, you have certain substances, there's moderate Alzheimer's, you can put them on rivastigmine. If there's behavioral issue, you can put them on donepezil. You can kind of slow down things. You can give them behavioral adjustment, counseling, reminiscence therapy. All those things can be done, whatever is available to you. But I would not advise shifting to the cost of that medicine, jeopardizing the future of the future generations. This is something we need to take care of. I have patients who have, trying to look, not dementia patients, I'm talking about patients who are on ventilators in private hospitals, have spent lakhs of rupees. And then they come and ask me, doctor, what should I do with the patient? We have sold one house. We are on the verge of selling the other house. The patient is not improving, still on ventilator. I tell them that, see, you have done what nobody could do. You have sold two houses. The person has a condition which is not going to improve. So you have to decide whether you want to take your person home or you want to jeopardize the future generations. There are future generations in your family, whether it's 2 children, whether it's 3 children. So really, there's a lot of discussion which needs to be done. I would not recommend using this medicine as of now until we know more. See, when a drug undergoes trial, for example, I'll give a simple example. When a vaccine undergoes a trial, they say there are no side effects. But when the vaccine is used in the public, you know what happened. There is an autoimmune phenomenon which happens. There is a vascular risk which happens, which we all are learning from the vaccines. But in the trial mode, these side effects were not picked up. It's only when the vaccine was put to use to the public, the problems were picked up. Similarly, the Americans are now the guinea pigs. The Americans are going to get this medicine. We will learn in the next 6 months what adverse effects these medicines produce truly. And then we could think whether it's worth the while to spend all that money. Thank you.
Thanks, ma'am. That was a great word of wisdom from you. We will definitely wait and then see the results and then maybe start using it. So now coming back to Madam Meera, when she said that one has to liberate themselves out of guilt, I thought that is a very good topic today for discussion and maybe for some more time. Like liberating out of guilt, like all caregivers undergo this sense of guilt after maybe the phase of caring, they exit the phase of caring. All the time they think that, yeah, I could have behaved better, I could have behaved much kind with my father or mother, whoever we have been immediately caring. Even I had some kind of experience, which if all of you allow, I can also share. Like I was going through this kind of a guilt when I was caring for my father. But then I visited Mumbai during one of our ARDSI conferences, and I had the privilege of meeting one Dr. Mohan Agase, whom all of you know. So, who is the producer as well as actor, protagonist in the film called Astu. So I was on the sidelines just talking with them, and then he very clearly took me through a process of realizing as to how to liberate out of this guilt. I thought this would be a very right occasion for me to share that among all our people here. So he just differentiated me, like made me realize to differentiate between action and intention. So he said, he just narrated a small kind of an incident in Pune railway station where he happened to be an observer on a bench, and he was seeing that near a staircase there was an old man, a frail elderly man who was just lying, and almost in the urgency of people catching train. So all of them were almost like either hitting on him or maybe stepping on him, and they were avoiding somehow, and he was at a very precarious position there. And then nobody was ever mindful to just get him outside that dangerous position. So there was one trolley wala who was just pushing his trolley, and he was just coming on the platform, and he had a very abusive tongue, and he was just abusing whoever were passing through him, and then he was yelling at people. And while seeing this frail elderly, he said, oh grand, oh Buddha, you are just risking yourself. And whatever abusive he can be, to the extent he was abusive. But being abusive, this guy just took the courage of just pulling him out of that precarious situation and putting him to safety. And then he gave him a mouthful of just all Indian galis possible. And then that was something like for anybody to were around, they all started thinking that how abusive this guy is. and he is so unkind with that old man. But then after some time, this same trolley wala, after securing his trolley, he came back and he was having a handful of pudi in a patal. And then he said, oh, granny, did you eat at all? Like, if you don't eat, then you would die. And he was once again at his abusive best. But then this guy just fed him. And that is where the story, Dr. Mohan Agassi stopped the story. He said, Narendra, you see, here the action suggested that that guy was very cruel and foul-mouthed, and he was talking anything bad one could hear about. But you see the intention behind that. Nobody cared to drag him out of the danger. Nobody cared to feed him. Okay, so this guy, though he was in his abusive best, but then his intention was very good. So we need to basically understand that in our quest to care for our dear ones, our intentions were very good. But then our actions must have not suggested, or maybe not exactly what we might have expected. So if we all only famously remember our own action and live in the guilt. So to liberate out of the guilt, one has to understand the intention of us. And then, as rightly said by Madam Meera, that you did your best. We did our best to take care of our loved ones. Okay. There may be any number of occasions when we think back and see that, yeah, we could have behaved well, because we always keep our near and dear ones to whom we care at a pedestal or maybe at a reference point. For me, my father was a demigod. For me, my father was an officer. But I can't just think of him doing something unusual in front of others. So that is why my reference point is that. So with these few words, I just wanted to just make aware people that please liberate out of this guilt. Don't live in this sense of guilt. And that is not going to help you in any way. Yeah, so thank you so much. And maybe though I was supposed to be a moderator, so I just took a little more time to share my own little experience, because this is a series where we are talking about superheroes. I think in the whole series, this was the time where the speaker spoke a little less and we had more people sharing their own wisdom. And now I would invite the real person behind this whole idea. Nilanjana ji, if you're around, I would request you to share a few words of wisdom, and then you can also give us the background of this whole series, and then we can maybe conclude. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much, Narendra ji. I'm so happy that that the thought that I had of bringing all the superheroes, I mean, whether they admit or not, they are, because the work that you do helps the rest of the world to work. If you did not do what you were doing, everything would fall apart. So believe me, caregiving work is the crux. The work that you do helps the rest of the world to function. So you are superheroes, and I'm so happy that my idea of bringing superheroes from across India, we keep on doing the work that we do in our own region. I felt that the caregiving community as a whole should come together, share their experiences, and what lovely sharing. Each story is unique. Each story gives us ideas, gives us lessons to learn and take it forward. So thank you, Binaji. Thank you, Mr. Singh, for sharing. And what different range of emotions, challenges. And I think nothing could be a better platform than coming together and accepting the difficulties, accepting the challenges. And I think talking about guilt, for me personally, I don't see that you need to fight that unless and until it is really affecting you in a major way. Because we are very much into closures and that it should not happen. Anything negative we feel should not happen. But that's life. It's a mix of positives and negatives. How we handle that is most important. So acknowledging that, yes, things have not worked the way it should have happened, but it has happened. Now, there are various kinds of guilts, in a dementia journey. It could be that, oh my God, the other caregivers are doing such a wonderful job. I'm not doing. Or it could be that I have not been treating my mother or father or my husband or my wife the way I should be. So it could be various types of guilt. And depending on the type of guilt, you come up with, a plan as to how I will tackle that. So it is very important that we recognize the type of guilt we have and then come up with how we can solve it. It could be solving, it could be in a day, or it could take you months and years. But understanding that, yes, this acknowledging it is the first step. So I think, today was a mix of a discussion about the medical aspect as well as the non-medical aspect. And I think both sides are so important to clear our doubts. And thank you, Dr. Tripathi, for being a part of this discussion, because even though it's a purely caregiving talk, but I think both the pharmacological and the non-pharmacological aspects are important for understanding of this journey and clearing the doubts of caregivers. So thank you. And thank you all for joining. Gives us hope that we can continue with this discussion in days to come. And we have done the eastern part, the western part, the northern part. Next month, we will go to the southern part and bring in caregivers from the southern part of India. And we will come back again and, go through the same cycle. So thank you. Thank you from my side. It's a pleasure to have you all. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nilanjana ji, and thanks to all our speakers. So I have another congratulatory message from our very well-known carer, former carer, Madam Sharda Subramaniam. So she is telling that this whole discussion on guilt has been very useful and is so very necessary for caregivers. It took me also ages to get over the guilt of what else I could have done. Thanks. So with these words, I think today, while congratulating all our superheroes, so all of you have been superheroes and you have been sources of inspiration for us. And thanks Nilanjana ji for conceptualizing such a wonderful series of events, which every day is so very well, like every time I hear it, like for the last 3 times I have been hosting it for ARDSI, and it has been a very wonderful experience for me. And I have personally learned a lot, and I would invite Madam Meera to say some concluding remarks so that we can wind up this thing. Yeah.
Thank you all. This was really a fascinating discussion. And as Nilanjana said, this is the first time we had medical discussion also. So it was very good, because so far we never had any medical discussion, which is equally important. Just as caregiving is important, also, clarifications from the medical angle, especially about the new drug. I totally agree with what Manjari has said. This is something which has not even been accepted in the US, and the costs are so prohibitive. So let them be the guinea pigs. I love that expression of hers. So, let's be happy with whatever is, so much is available here, but we need it to do it in the early stages. And there's nothing like caregiving, and that is how ARDSI is coming up with the dementia care skills training. In fact, we have done national training also. And so we'll be able to get more number of helpers and carers, professional carers, and who are the persons who are taking care in the family, even with the family members, to give them care training so that they can give better quality of care. And that will improve the lives of both persons with dementia and the family caregivers. So thank you all. Thank you, YP. Thank you, Beena. Thank you, Manjari, and each and every one of you for being here and making this a big success.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot to all of you once again. So now we conclude here, and
all of you stay safe. Okay.
yeah.
Yeah. So we want, all of us to, I hope all of you are vaccinated.
Yes.
Great, great. Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye. Bye, everyone.
Thanks a lot, ma'am.
Thank you, Nilanjana ji.
Bye bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank
Bye,
you, Narendra ji.
Nilanjana.
Thank you.